Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas. I'm Delano D'Souza. Coming up on the show this week, screenwriters in Hollywood strike for the first time in 15 years. Negotiations between the Writers Guild and TV networks, as well as streaming platforms, breaking down over pay. One of the fashion industry's biggest nights pays tribute to the late Karl Lagerfeld. Some attendees of this year's Met Gala even dressing up as the designer's beloved cat, Choupette. And supporters of the far-right jailed governor of Santa Cruz, Bolivia, refusing to give up. This as the gap widens between the wealthy province and the capital, La Paz. But first, screenwriters in Hollywood are striking for the first time in 15 years. Negotiations between the Writers Guild of America and TV networks, as well as Netflix, Amazon and Disney, breaking down after the two sides failed to find an agreement on issues like pay, mandatory staffing, and guarantees against artificial intelligence.
Residuals that we used to get from airing on television around the world, streaming companies don't give us, they give us a pittance of residuals. We're not getting the money we used to get.
They have been around for a while now, but no adjustments have really been made since that time, so it's reached a critical mass at this point where we're willing to strike over it because they've shown an unwillingness to do it without striking.
You can't steal our soul. They really want to replace us. They'll be like, oh, no need for copyrights, no need for royalty, no need for anything.
Catherine Viet has more now on what the screenwriters say they want.
It's an industry that rakes in around $30 billion in annual profits. But for Hollywood's TV and screenwriters, their share of the pie has been steadily declining. According to the Writers Guild of America, currently half of all scripters are now paid the minimum salary level, while median pay for the higher writer-producer level has fallen 4% over the last decade. The union calls it an existential moment, with fierce competition among streaming services and a boom in content production creating more jobs, but eroding working conditions and pay.
In a difficult negotiation with a powerful group of companies, you don't win gains by playing nice or knowing the right people or with an extra firm handshake. No. What you're able to win is directly tied to how much leverage you have. Our leverage as a union depends on our willingness to walk away from a bad deal.
Streaming giants like Disney Plus and Netflix say while they're prepared to boost compensation, they can't accept other demands, such as minimum staffing requirements. The WGA has accused the studios of not negotiating in good faith.
Streaming. The streaming rules for some genres of writers, there's no minimum at all. For some, there's very low minimums. And getting residuals from reruns, what used to be a huge part of a writer's income, especially later in life, older writers who might have written for classics, that used to be a huge part of their income, and now that's dying out. So it's almost like writers are losing an entire source of income in the current economy.
The last time the WGA called a strike was in 2007, and it lasted 100 days, paralyzing production in Hollywood. It also cost the California economy around $2 billion.
The U.S. Treasury Secretary is warning that America could run out of money to pay its bills as early as next month. Janet Yellen targeting June 1st as a so-called X date, as she urged congressional leaders to act fast to raise the U.S. debt ceiling. Far-right Republicans in Congress are demanding steep spending cuts in return, a position that's been rejected by President Biden and congressional Democrats. The standoff is threatening to push the world's top economy into default. Brian Quinn reports.
The clock is ticking. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Monday warned that America could run out of money to pay its bills as early as June 1st.
If Congress fails to increase the debt limit, it would cause severe hardship to American families, harm our global leadership position, and raise questions about our ability to defend our national security interests.
Previous estimates had put X date, the day U.S. coffers actually run dry, closer to the end of summer. The shortened time frame is now piling pressure on President Joe Biden and congressional leaders. Biden has invited Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell for an urgent meeting at the White House next week, but finding compromise will be a tall order. With far-right Republicans digging in, on April 26th, the GOP-controlled House narrowly passed a bill that would raise the debt ceiling in exchange for deep spending cuts to key Biden initiatives and social programs. That bill dead on arrival in the Democratic-controlled Senate.
Republicans' Default on America Act poses two terrible choices. Either default on the debt or default on our country.
America's previous $31.4 trillion borrowing cap was reached on January 19th. Since then, Treasury has been paying its bills using accounting tricks dubbed extraordinary measures. A 2011 debt ceiling standoff took America to the brink of default and damaged its credit rating. Many believe the current one will be even harder to resolve.
To our number of the week next, and it's 155,000. That's the number of federal employees in Canada who had gone on strike. Public services, including passport renewals, had been impacted. The strike has now ended after unions struck a 12.6% pay increase for a 4-year period, and new protections on remote working were reached. Now in Bolivia, the gap keeps widening between the capital La Paz and the wealthy province of Santa Cruz. Far-right Luis Fernando Camacho, the Santa Cruz governor and opposition leader, has been held for 4 months now, but his supporters are not giving up on the ultra-conservative Catholic. France 24 correspondents on the ground file this report.
No queremos vivir como Venezuela, no queremos vivir como Cuba, dictadura, comunismo.
In Bolivia's largest city, Santa Cruz, far-right activists are protesting against a new set of laws which aims to regulate the informal sector.
We the people are tired of dictatorship. We don't want these laws. That's why we took to the streets today, because Bolivia is not Cuba. I want people to be free in this country. I want democracy and justice.
These people are supporters of opposition leader Fernando Camacho, who's also governor of Bolivia's Santa Cruz province. Camacho is often compared to former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. He's been detained for 4 months on charges of terrorism.
He was jailed because he led our patriotic fight during the 2019 protests. He was our leader. That's why he's in jail.
Camacho's advisors are convinced that the far-right former presidential candidate is a victim of political persecution.
Al principal opositor, el gobernador Luis Fernando Camacho, se lo encarcela.
They're throwing the main opposition leader in jail for reasons that are completely illegal and unconstitutional. This means we are not sure at all if he'll be able to run in 2025.
With over 30% of the national GDP, Santa Cruz is Bolivia's richest region, and it has always stood against socialist policies. One organization in particular is leading this fight, the Santa Cruz Civic Committee.
We were hoping that Fernando Camacho would win the election. We want fewer civil servants. We want the regions and departments to get more support so that they can play a more important role.
The Civic Committee says they're a peaceful organization, but some of their supporters were accused of putting pressure on a poor neighborhood of Santa Cruz who opposed the 2022 strike.
They didn't want us to sell anything or to work. They made us close down. They ransacked everything, threw firecrackers at us.
Some also point out that many of Camacho's supporters are racist.
They're whiter than us, so they discriminate us. So then we're second-class citizens.
Camacho's supporters are getting ready for the 2025 presidential race. Their aim is to unite all opposition parties behind one candidate and win the race.
And the fashion industry had one of its biggest nights on Monday. This year's edition of the Met Gala, paying tribute to the late Karl Lagerfeld. The designer was honored by attendees, some even dressing up like Lagerfeld himself, others like his beloved cat, Choupette. That's it for this edition of Inside the Americas. From all of us on team, thank you very much for watching.
The world is ever-changing. The news doesn't wait.
France 24 gives a global perspective that an educated, intelligent, and active viewer is going to want to have to be able to fully understand the issues of the day.
That's why it will always be there to help make sense of world events.
J'ai l'habitude de suivre France 24 partout où je me trouve. Et ce, grâce à mon smartphone, parce que je ne reste pas souvent devant la télé.
Quand une information circule sur la toile, j'utilise l'application de France 24 pour vérifier l'authenticité.
For the best international coverage, 24 hours a day, no matter what, France 24 is with you everywhere, all the time.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.